So I wanted to make a video and introduce myself. I started my YouTube channel to raise awareness about chronic illnesses. My name is Susan Peppelman. I've had my chronic illness since around December 2019. On December 26, 2019, I woke up in severe pain. I thought I just had some gas that needed to pass, and then I would be okay. I proceeded to get violently ill, and my husband was like, "Do we need to go to the emergency room?" And I was like, "Well, we do, but I don't know how we're going to get there." I was in so much pain I couldn't even walk to the car, and I kept getting sick, and I was just waiting for the pain to subside enough that I would be able to get to the vehicle to get to the emergency room. We finally made it to the emergency room. I was taken back pretty quickly. They gave me some anti-nausea medication, some pain medication, and I started to feel better. And I thought, oh, maybe this is all just in my head. Well, I called them the men in green because the surgeons at UC Health wear green. So the surgeon comes in after they did my CT scan, and he was a little overly excited, I guess, because what I had was a rare condition. I had what you call a cecal volvulus. Essentially, my intestines had twisted on themselves and I needed an emergency surgery. At the time, they didn't tell me it was called a cecal volvulus. They just told me that my intestines had twisted on themselves. So I was just like, okay, I need surgery. This isn't a big deal. Let's, go and do it. I didn't really have a choice. I would later find out that actually if a cecal volvulus isn't treated quickly, it's actually really deadly. So I had surgery. I came out of surgery around 7 p.m. on December 26th. Around 3:30, 4 a.m. on December 27th, so less than 12 hours after coming out of surgery, I woke up and I was like, I'm either going to vomit or I'm going to poop. One or the other is about to happen. And I ended up pooping out over a liter of blood. I freaked out. I was in the bathroom. I didn't feel like I was going to pass out. I just literally freaked out because there was a hat in my toilet and I saw that it was just full of blood and it was overflowing into the toilet. So I pulled the cord, sat down on the bathroom floor, was crying. I was in pain. The nurses came in, and of course a code got called on me. So they're getting me back into bed. I'm fighting them because I feel like I have to go to the bathroom again. They're telling me I need to stay in bed. Surgeon comes in, hemoglobin's dropped rapidly. I'm down to like a 5.6, 5.4 hemoglobin. It's obviously, I'm bleeding internally. We don't know why. So the surgeon comes in, and around 5 a.m. he's like, "You're going into surgery now." And I'm like, well, I need to call my husband. So I call my husband. For some reason, I didn't freak my husband out because I very calmly tell him that I need to have emergency surgery. And my husband tells the surgeon, I'm coming over. My husband's like, she's going to be in surgery before you even get here. And we only lived like 10, 15 minutes from the hospital. So I had my second emergency surgery. During that second surgery, they could not find the bleed. So they took out my entire bowel looking for the bleed. Turns out the cause of my bleed was actually a medication error. That's why they couldn't find the cause of the bleed. But because there was so much blood inside my stomach and my intestines, they couldn't really see what they were doing when they took out the entire bowel. So I come out of surgery. It's around like 9:30 a.m. I'm shaking uncontrollably. I don't feel well. This is my second surgery in less than 12 hours. Both times I was fully cut open. I couldn't urinate. Just had a really difficult time. So I, back in my room, I was in the hospital for a week. Every night, for some reason it would happen at night, blood would come out of my rectum. It was just the old blood making its way out, but for whatever reason it would happen at night. I would have panic attacks. And after about a week and a half, it finally stopped. All the blood made its way out. So I had this surgery in December of 2019. And I didn't heal well. And I kept telling my surgeon, something's wrong. Like, I don't feel well. Something's not right. And he kept just telling me I was taking longer to heal. I do have a history of an eating disorder, and he kind of blamed it on that. Mind you, during this process, I was so adamant that it wasn't the eating disorder that I worked really hard, despite how sick I was, to try and put on some weight, which I did. Even though I couldn't eat most foods. So whatever I could eat, I would try and eat the most of it. I was having like fullness, vomiting, dumping syndrome, constipation, diarrhea, like all these different things were going on. So this kept happening, and then COVID hit. So every doctor's appointment was virtual. No one was listening to me. Everyone just said, you're taking longer to heal, it's your eating disorder. So finally in October of 2020, during COVID, I went to eating disorder treatment. I told them I had GI issues. They said, that's fine. We've dealt with that. Not a big deal. I go, they didn't listen to me. I left a week and a half later, AMA, came home, and the following morning I woke up violently ill. Ended up in the emergency room, was admitted through the emergency room. I had a massive ileus, meaning there was stool all throughout my entire intestine that was not moving. The surgeons were so impressed with my CT scan that everyone on the surgical team looked at it because they couldn't believe that there wasn't a complete blockage. So I was in the hospital for a few days. They gave me some really strong laxatives. Eventually we got things moving. Then I started having a lot of symptoms of like severe fullness, really severe nausea. I wasn't able to get anything down. I lost a rapid amount of weight in a very short period of time. And it still kept getting blamed on the eating disorder. So I went to another facility who said they worked with GI issues. Again, I was hesitant, but I went. They actually really did work with severe GI issues. They worked really well with me. We did a lot of tube feeding into my jejunum while I was there. And they were the first facility to finally say, you do in fact have severe GI issues. So I came home in, I want to say, the beginning of March of 2021. And I went to my primary care doctor and I was like, look, they said that I do have severe GI issues. Who's the best GI doctor in town? I want to see him and I want testing. So I went and I saw this GI doctor and I told him what was going on, and I really think he just did the testing to appease me. Well, every test came back positive, showing that something was wrong. My first test that they did was a smart pill test, which essentially is trying to see how things move through your GI system. My smart pill testing showed that I had severe gastroparesis, I had delayed small bowel transit, and delayed colon transit. Next test, I had an anorectical manometry. It showed that I had no pelvic floor functioning. Like anywhere I don't have any pelvic floor functioning. I have no functioning in my rectum. I have no ability to push stool out. So now it's June of 2021. I'm in a severe flare with my gastroparesis. I was starting to lose weight. I asked my primary care doctor, I'm like, can we place an NJ tube? So we placed the NJ tube. We're having issues getting formula covered by insurance, so we hospitalized me. My rectum became inflamed, so I actually had to go NPO. And I couldn't have anything, so I had no nutrition for a few days. And then they tried to place a GJ tube, and they pulled the NJ tube. Well, the GJ tube within hours flipped, and it came out of my jejunum. For whatever reason, and they struggled to place the first NJ tube, I cannot get a J tube to go past my nasal cavity. For whatever reason, they won't work. So now I was 7 days with no nutrition. We couldn't get the GJ tube to go back into my jejunum. No doctor would touch me surgically to place a J tube surgically. So I went on TPN. I was told that I would be on TPN for 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks went and 2 weeks was gone, and I was still on TPN. and no one knew what to do for me because I was getting sicker and sicker. I went and saw a surgeon up in Denver who offered me a surgery called the GPOM, which is supposed to be helpful for people with gastroparesis. But he told me, due to my dysmotility and my bile reflux, that there was probably like a 30 to 40% chance of it being successful. And if it wasn't successful, I would never be able to eat again. So essentially there was nothing that could be done. I still couldn't get any surgeon to place a J-tube. They wouldn't do it. For whatever reason, they were afraid to touch me. So I continued on TPN. My GI doctor didn't know what to do. We noticed that I had developed pseudo-obstruction disorder. Essentially, nothing was moving through my colon. So I was constantly developing the symptoms that are similar to a blockage without an actual blockage. I constantly had ileuses. So finally, I got in with the Cleveland Clinic. To this day, I'm still with the Cleveland Clinic. I love my motility specialist at the Cleveland Clinic. He's very well known. I see Dr. Michael Klein. I went out to there and we got me on some anti-nausea medications. This was in November of 2021. At that point, my nausea was so debilitating that I couldn't do anything. I literally was just curled up in a ball on the floor crying because I could not get the nausea to go away despite being on IV anti-nausea medication and being on TPN. My weight, for whatever reason, was dropping. My TPN formula wasn't formulated very well, so I switched TPN companies. At this point, I was developing ileuses all the time, and I was going in and out of the hospital starting in December of 2021. From December of 2021 until April of 2024, I have had over 30 admissions to the hospital, all for various reasons. So I think it was April of let me backtrack. In February of 2022, I did have a pyloroplasty, which was supposed to open up my pylorus and make it easier for me to eat and hopefully get me off of TPN. The surgery was not very successful. I did trial tooth fees. I did get off of TPN for a little bit, but it was short-lived. I went out to the Cleveland Clinic in April of 2022 to meet with my motility specialist and the TPN department at Cleveland Clinic. It was during that trip out there that I was hospitalized by the TPN clinic to get my TPN set up correctly. I also, at that time, was referred to colorectal surgery for an ileostomy. I was not expecting that. I had never imagined that that was even something that was going to be on the table. I had no motility in my colon. I had no motility in my rectum. Both were non-functioning. I had failed all medications. However, mentally, I was not prepared for an ileostomy. They did more further testing. They did a SITS marker study. All SITS markers stayed inside of my body. Not a single one passed through. During the 5-day course of the test, I didn't go to the bathroom at all. And it was decided by this colorectal surgeon that my best option was an ileostomy. Internally, I felt like this was not the right decision for me at that time. And I wish I had listened to my instinct, because I got the ileostomy and I struggled really, really hard mentally. I struggled to the point that I almost killed myself. I couldn't handle it. It destroyed me. And in July of 2022, I went and saw my local surgeon and asked him to reverse it. He agreed to reverse it, didn't understand why they even gave me an ileostomy, didn't think that it was necessary. And in August of 2022, it was reversed. In that time period, while I had the ileostomy, I had a high output ileostomy because I was on TPN and not eating. So all of the bile was just going through my small bowel out into my bag. I was having constant issues with electrolytes, constantly in the hospital, and I'll be completely honest, I became non-compliant with my TPN. I didn't care. I wanted to die. I was so miserable. I was in such a bad state mentally. I hated the thing. I would cry. I couldn't sleep. So the ileostomy was reversed, and I was really hopeful. I felt like myself again. I felt like I finally got my life back. During that time period, there was a new motility medication that came out. My motility doctor put me on it. He put me on another medication that had recently come out for gastroparesis. The combination of the two seemed to be working. I felt really hopeful. I actually did go to eating disorder treatment since things had gotten so bad when I had the ileostomy. Went through eating disorder treatment. That seemed to go okay. I was eating again, wasn't on TPN, wasn't on tube feeds. Towards the end of my eating disorder treatment, I developed a fever. I had been sick on and off while I was impartial, and my last few days there, I got a fever of 103. When you have a port, which I have for medications, and I had it for my TPN, I was accessed at that point in time for my medications. You run the risk of getting an infection. I came home and was immediately told by my PCP that I needed to go to the emergency room to be evaluated for a central line infection. I went, the hospital said, we'll draw cultures, and if anything comes back positive, we'll let you know. Well, within 12 hours, the cultures grew staph. I had a staph infection in my blood. So I was hospitalized for 4 days on IV antibiotics, and I was home on IV antibiotics for 2 weeks. Well, IV antibiotics are known to cause C. diff. I developed C. diff, but we didn't know I had it for probably about 2 months of me having C. diff. Unfortunately, the C. diff destroyed my colon, and I had no function left. The medication stopped working. Everything shut down. I was in an immense amount of pain. No one would believe me. They thought it was the eating disorder again. And finally, my motility specialist stepped in after looking at all my CT scans, because even with C. diff, which this is unheard of, I was still backed up. People with C. diff are not backed up, but I was. He stepped in and he's like, you guys, she can't eat. She's not lying. She's so backed up that there's no space to put the food. So I went back on TPN, and in April of 2023, Dr. Klein told me that I needed a permanent ileostomy due to the fact that my colon and rectum didn't function. And I told him I don't want to talk about it. That was in April. I continued to be extremely sick. I lived in the bathroom. I constantly felt like I had to go to the bathroom. I constantly had rectal spasming. I constantly felt the urge to go to the bathroom but couldn't push any stool out. I had no ability to do so. I would just lay there crying. I would sit on the toilet crying. I had incontinence issues because there would be stool trapped in my rectum, so if I had to pass gas, stool would leak out. This went on for months and months. Finally, in July of 2023, I swallowed my pride, and I called Dr. Klein's office and I said I need a referral to a colorectal surgeon. I went out to Cleveland Clinic and met with Dr. Canters. I love my colorectal surgeon, Dr. Canters, and she's like, I can give you an ileostomy, but I can't promise you'll get off of TPN. She's like, the only thing I can do is I can promise I will get you off the toilet and take some of your pain away. And I did not want to hear that, because Dr. Klein had believed that if I got an ileostomy, I would get off of TPN. Well, she initially said she could do the surgery at the end of August. I saw her at the beginning of August. She said she could do it at the end of August. I pushed the surgery off until the end of September. I needed to prepare mentally for this. I needed to just take time. I needed to research, were there new ostomy products out? Was there new things I could do to make this better? Like, I needed to work through it with my therapist. Like, I needed to make sure that my Colorado treatment team was going to be there for me when I came home. I needed to make sure that things were going to be different this time. I had my surgery September 23rd, 2023, and I woke up and had instant relief from pain that I had been dealing with for months. It was like my world had changed. And I struggled at first with my ileostomy a lot. Not as bad as the first time around, but I struggled. I handled it a lot better than I thought I would. And I still struggle with having it. And it's been like a really hard year. I struggled with being on TPN. I thought I could eat, and everyone told me I had to stay on TPN. I didn't stay TPN compliant. And in the beginning of 2024, my palliative care team told me that if things didn't improve this year, that next year I would be going on hospice, that they would pull all life-sustaining treatment, and that I would go on hospice and essentially die. That was really difficult. I think the more difficult part was having to have that conversation with my husband. I remember sitting down with him and telling him that I would be going on hospice if things didn't improve in a year. I remember him crying. I remember him saying he didn't know what he would do without me, but he was understood. He saw how much pain I was in. He was tired of watching me live in pain. And he also asked me a really important question, which was, do you not want to live, or do you not want to live like this? And the answer to the question was, I don't want to live like this. So I sat there and I really thought about it, and I'm like, what needs to change? What needs to be different for me to not want to go on hospice? And I thought there were three things. I needed the endless hospitalizations to stop. I needed to have purpose in my life, and I needed to get off of TPN. So I got myself together and I thought, how are we going to do this, and what are we going to do? So I enrolled in school. That was first things first. I take classes online. School was purpose for me. I want to finish my degree for myself. The next thing was I wanted the endless hospitalizations to stop, and I had been referred to Omaha, University of Nebraska's gut rehab program in Omaha, Nebraska. So I went there, and I knew I needed to go to eating disorder treatment to try and get off of TPN, because I knew I had developed ARFID, avoided restrictive food intake disorder, that I was afraid to eat out of fear of getting sick. So in March, we went to the Nebraska gut rehab program. They offered to help me get off of TPN, but it would take 1 to 2 years. That wasn't acceptable to me. I ended up going to the eating disorder program, and I successfully got off of TPN. We're currently kind of considering doing some supplemental TPN because I have really high calorie needs. But my life has really changed a lot since I made the decision to fight. I realize now I wasn't fighting for my life. I was letting it pass me by. I was existing through each day. I was surviving, and that's not living. And I am happy to say now, like, I consider myself to be living each day with intention, doing things that give me purpose, living out my life. Hospice for me is no longer on the table. I feel like I have purpose in my day. I have a blog. I'm working on setting up my YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing some chronic illness coaching, helping other people who have chronic illnesses who need help with like navigating the system, advocacy, talking with their doctors, all those types of things. I eat. I haven't eaten in years. I have to eat a lot, so sometimes it feels like a full-time job. And I have not been in the hospital since May 12th, which is the longest I have gone without being in the hospital in years. So that's like kind of summarizes my story. I know this is really long. Most people probably haven't watched all of it, but I just wanted to give a little background about who I am, my story, you know, what's been going on, why I started this channel, and kind of, if you're living with a chronic illness, things can get better. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of fighting. I still have bad days. I still have flare-ups. I still have days I don't feel well. The other day I was curled up on the floor over there right next to my desk crying because the nausea was so bad and I didn't know what to do because nothing was working. And I have good days. But it doesn't always have to be miserable. We have to, when we have a chronic illness, we have to figure out ways to make life work for us so that we can have a life that has meaning instead of always being in the illness and the illness controlling our lives. We need to be controlling our lives and not letting the illness dictate our day-to-day life.